Okay, welcome everyone. This is by far my favorite evening. Don't tell anybody else from this point forward, but this is my favorite evening of the Local Government Business Academy. We have laid the base with the Office of Neighborhoods and our school district, as well as the three branches of government, but this is where the action actually happens. So I'm so glad you all made it out. I know the roads are a little dicey tonight, so thanks for coming out. First of all, over in that corner is a bunch of snacks that Casey and Kristen brought in, so please enjoy over the course of this evening. Jeff, could you tell us where the bathrooms are in case anybody needs them?
Out right behind firefighter Mike Birnbaum, behind you, and straight across the hallway to the right or left, depending on your gender.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so tonight we're gonna be an action-oriented group. We have Fire Chief Jeff Brandt right here. Yes, you can actually wave your hand. All right. He's the one that's going to be doing some jazz hands, just as Mike Painter requested. Thank you very much. And Painter also suggested that he might even sing a song for us, so we're going to be tuned in for that. And in the back of the room, we have Interim Police Chief Mike Collier, who is filling in until our new Chief of Police arrives. And obviously, sprinkled throughout the room, you see men and women in uniform, and they're here to help us learn about our fire and police departments. So without any further ado, I'm going to just hand it over because we got a lot on our agenda tonight.
We're good. We'll try to stay on time, but
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Very excited to participate in this and the opportunity to get in front of you guys to kind of, again, jazz hands or show off what we do in your community. And we are very proud of what we do. We take a lot of pride, and we in all of our actions. It is the most important is that we provide that excellent customer service. And that is in our conversations daily as we're out on the streets. So, again, my name is Jeff Brandt, and I work for your fire department. This is Chief Gordy Hughes and Chief Brad Davis. Us three are the management team for Missoula Fire. You'll hear from Chief Coyer and Chief Hoffman, and they'll do the second part of this. So how this is going to run, we've got about 15 minutes that we've planned for kind of show and tell, and then police will take over, do their little presentation, and then we'll have it sounds like we'll have time for some question and answer after those two presentations. It sounds like that'll be the most efficient. We're timing that with our burn tower out there, so we've got some folks out there that they'll ignite and burn stuff out in the burn tower, and we'll have the opportunity to go out there and show you through a lens of here's what happens when there's a fire, and here's how appropriate apparatus pull in, make assignments, and then do their stuff. So we'll just get moving on this. This will just be a quick overview, and then we'll have time for questions. So Missoula Fire Department, we currently operate with just over a $14 million budget. With that pie chart, you can see that as with most organizations, salaries are a large portion of that, and then the money's left from that that's what we manage. So it sounds like a big budget, but if you look at the numbers, it's the heart and soul is our salaries, and then we take the rest of that money and then make sure that our folks have the time, tools, and training to accomplish that mission. This is our call volume, which I love this graph. You see since 2010 we've really taken off, and how busy that we've been in our fire department. I'm not sure if Mike or Scott have a graph of their call volume, but you can see that. But it really does show the increase of what's happening this last decade.
Hey, Jeff, while we're on the screen, what percentage of all those calls is actually for fires?
So last year, in 2019, we had 50 actual...
Oh, those are structures, not all fires.
Yeah.
All fires were...
Well, let's just define that as we switch to... Bradley? We actually have those stats right there.
Kind of. What do you want?
All fires.
I was just kind of curious
All
about
fires.
the number of fires that we
Yep.
actually, you guys put out.
All of them sooner or later.
All of them. They'll be here, 148? Yep. So we had 148 in the calendar year 2019.
It's more than we think.
A little over 60% of our work is in the EMS world.
Yep. So an overview in our city limits, we run with about we run with 5 stations distributed geographically, and that is they are located according to and built there with response times. Our goal is to get to an incident in 6 minutes after we receive the call. And so there's a processing time and response time until wheels stop in front of that door. And our goal, 90% of the time, is to get on scene at 6 minutes. And we do that often, and we always try to get better. 2 additional facilities is one you'll be visiting in shortly. It will be the Burn Tower, and then we have a boathouse that's located down in Corbett Park, which houses our rescue watercraft or our jet skis, and we're able to navigate with the river running through our beautiful town. Some of the equipment listed: 8 engines, couple ladder trucks. Ladder trucks are located on either side of the city. Our folks at this station, this is what we consider a cross-staff station, so at all times we have a minimum of 3 firefighters that are posted up at each station. This station, along with Station 3, which is at the bottom of 39th and Hillview, have a ladder truck and a fire engine, and those are cross-staff. So if a fire is up on Hillview, these folks, our firefighters here, grab their gear, move it over to the ladder truck, put it on, get on the ladder truck, and we go to that side of town. The fire's on this side of the river, geographically speaking, the folks on that side bring their ladder truck. So when you go to a fire in the city of Missoula, smoke showing, you'll get, your service currently is 3 engines, 3 fire engines, a ladder truck, and a battalion chief. And that is our regular complement to a structure fire. Downtown is where our battalion chief is housed, along with the rest of us staff people, and that's where we run out of, which is just across the Madison Street Bridge there. 3 command vehicles and 6 wildlands with our urban interface. We also have a wildland engine or type at each of the stations so that they can respond appropriately. 3 watercraft that we talked about. In the recent couple years, we've been able to increase our fleet with a couple of ambulances. We've done that for a couple different reasons. We saw a need for, as we talk about firefighters' health and safety, we implemented the ability to, not just when there's an actual incident like hazmat or structure fire, but we also have training. What we do is we rehab those firefighters after that scene. And so after a structure fire, they've worked for an hour or so with a couple of breathing apparatuses, which you'll see later. We'll replace that crew with a fresh crew and have them come through, and we use an ambulance for that for rehab. And they get their blood pressure checked, and they get a hot monitor put on, and we just make sure that they're safe. We do like an O2 stat, and we make sure that they're not breathing, so like carbon monoxide and monitoring, make sure that they're healthy. And so it's a very important part of our operations, not only in emergency operations, but also in training. And then other staff cars, and we'll overview that. We'll overview different sections of that as we walk through this PowerPoint. So, being fire department, these are kind of our bread and butter: structure fires and wildland fires. And we threw this picture in just to kind of present to you when the police have bulletproof vests and their gear that they're issued. This is the gear that our firefighters are issued, and that ensemble, when they walk in with the fire department, is about $10,000. So we have 96 firefighters assigned to our department. We're shy of, what's the police? 114. So. Along with fire, we provide the rescue, EMS, and specialty training. So we're fortunate enough, we have 2 training officers that watch over our EMS training and the rest of our special training and record keeping is portion of that is we are graded if we're keeping appropriate records. We also have a rescue team which consists of 22 members, and those folks train monthly and on special types, not just firefighting, that's our general training in EMS, but these are like special training, which would be river rescue, confined space, trench rescue, building collapse, and so those folks are trained as leaders. So, and they're distributed enough in the different shifts that we have that they're able to take those lead roles, put people where they need to, and manage that scene effectively. If I missed something, you guys make sure you jump in. Okay. So Chief Hughes is going to roll into fire prevention and some of the stuff that he manages, and then Chief Davis, he'll roll into some of our operations and what we're doing tonight. This is kind of down and dirty because we were really crunched for time last year. I feel like I could talk up here for hours about this fire department, but I know we were crunched last year, so we learned a little bit of kind of rolling through things, and then the ability really was the question and answer portion of that. So I'll hand it over to Chief Hughes to talk about his portion, and then Chief Davis can over from there.
So one of the divisions within the fire department, and a large component to what we do is, of course, on the prevention side of things in fire. We really want to see our fire incidents go down, which Heather's question was very appropriate because the Fire Prevention Bureau is doing a bang-up job in what they do and limiting the fires and the incidents of fires that we see in the community. They're out there providing public education in the classrooms and businesses and the people around the community to better understand what things cause fires in the community and what better way we can protect against that. They also do fire investigations. When we do have the occurrence of a fire, they'll go in and determine the origin and cause of the fire. And then we work in concert with PD if the fire is determined that it is an arson or a fire of something other than natural or accidental start. We also have code compliance. So we're in businesses doing inspections, making sure that businesses are maintaining compliance with fire code and building codes. Business owners in the crowd? You've probably seen or maybe had a visitation from the Fire Prevention Bureau to ensure that your business is fire compliant.
A lot of false alarms.
We do run a fair share of false alarms. It's unfortunate, but that generally has a human error component in it. Yeah, so any questions on the Fire Prevention Bureau?
So, how many fires are intentional? Is that arson?
Well, arson is a very difficult. It's one of the fire causes that are very hard to prove at times, especially if you got a couple of arsonists in the area. But we don't have an arson problem, thankfully, in the city of Missoula. I would say that on the percentage-wise, we're probably down under 10% of our fires are arson fires. I was quick.
Very quick. Bradley Richards, before you go through this, one thing I wanted to mention, and I don't know if police chiefs are going to talk to this, but I didn't want to discount 911, and so remember that 911 center and hub is just the heart and soul of how we get to go help people, and there's some great folks down there, and say down there because it's located in the bottom of the courthouse. If you guys didn't know that, it's in the basement of the courthouse. So. But super folks down there, they're the ones that take those information and then give us the tone outs, police and fire, to be able to come to whatever emergency it is that you're having today and be able to select and appropriate responses to that, so. Awesome, thank you. Okay, so I'm just gonna walk everybody through, just real quick, what we have in store for you guys tonight, from the fire side. So what we're gonna do after, PD's presentation is we'll number you guys off into groups of 3. So we'll do the 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then remember your number, and then we'll all go outside as one big group, and we're gonna go right out back here to the burn tower. We have crew set up there. We're gonna do a live fire burn in our burn tower. And what that will look like is we'll kind of take everybody out there, and we'll have an engine respond as if they were like a first due engine to a structure fire. And they're gonna get off the engine, and what you'll see them do is do a quick size up of what they have to deal with. We're gonna do a forcible entry. We have a forcible entry prop, so they're gonna do a forcible entry to get in the door. They're gonna take a hose line into the structure that's on fire, and we're gonna try to move this along, not in real time, because we want you guys to be able to see the fire inside. So we'll kind of let that heat build up, let the smoke build up, and then we have some doors we can open to kind of let you guys see in there. We got some thermal imaging cameras that can infrared that can see heat, so we'll kind of pass those around and let you guys kind of take a look at that. And so we'll have a crew go in to do initial fire attack. They'll do an offensive fire attack on the fire, and then we're going to have a crew come in the ladder truck. So they'll put the ladder truck up, and they're going to do a vertical ventilation. And so what their job is going to be is to get guys on the roof, cut a hole in the roof, and punch that hole out to let the hot smoke and gases and fire go out the top of the building. And then we'll have a third crew that's going to do a lap around the building and kind of do what we call soften the building. And they're going to put some ladders up, so if people inside needed to egress out of there, if they're doing rescues, the ladders are already going to be set up. And then they'll probably come around and pull a secondary hose line to back up that first crew that went in there. And then after we go through all those motions, we'll extinguish that fire and then kind of show you guys what that looks like as they hit that fire with the water and put the fire out. We'll have several of us out there in the group. We can kind of move around a little bit, and we'll kind of space ourselves into the crowd to answer any questions you guys might have and kind of walk you through what you're looking at. So that's going to be kind of our big ticket item for the night. Once we wrap that up, put the fire out, we'll come back in, and then we have 2 other fire scenarios, or 2 other fire stations, I guess you want to call it. So we'll do an auto extrication. That's where we're going to split you guys into your groups of 3, so we don't have such large crowds. And we'll send group number 1 over to our large bay on the end there to go through the PD presentation. They brought some cool gadgets and personnel over here to talk to you guys about what they do and some of their specialized equipment. Group number 2 will go right out here in our base, and we're going to do an auto extrication demonstration for you guys. We have 2 of our rescue team members that Jeff spoke to that specialize in auto extrication as one of the disciplines. So they're going to basically do we have a vehicle in there, a jump vehicle, so they'll show you how we kind of pop doors and cut into those and move things around to extricate patients out of vehicles. And then we'll have group number 3 come right back in here, and we're going to do what we call a pit crew CPR demonstration. I won't steal Erin's thunder. I'll let her explain to you what pit crew is and kind of the thought process behind that. It's just a new approach to CPR, not real new anymore. It's 50 years old, but it's an approach to CPR where kind of everyone has their own role, and it's been very effective in changing our outcomes for witness cardiac arrest. So I'll let that group talk to you about the statistics and what that looks like, and we'll give you a demonstration on that. And then if you guys want to get in there and do some compressions, and you guys can feel free to do that. A little safety thing when we're outside, let's just make sure we keep everybody back. I know it's been snowing a little bit tonight. Just make sure we're dressed appropriately and watch your footing out there. We don't want to slip or trip or anything like that. So that's kind of what we're going to do as far as our presentations. I'll let PD talk about what they're going to do a little bit with their presentation, and then are we going to take questions for fire now, or you want
After. No, we'll do
PD
it after.
Okay.
Brad, do you want us to do crowd control for the fire? Because that's
Yes, please.
right away, so we can't get the fire truck when we need to go. That's probably one of the biggest complaints, because we work 24 hours a day, so we will be at the fire first, but we cannot block the roadway for the fire department, otherwise they get really mad. So we try to stay out of their way just long enough for them to get in, and then our responsibility is the hoses and the crowd. So.
And then just real quick, while I got the floor, I guess still, I'm going to offer myself up right back here at this station on noon on Friday. If you guys want to come back
I'll be here over the lunch hour, so if you guys have any questions that you thought of, because we're kind of just banging through this, so if you guys want to talk to me about anything more in depth about what we're doing or have any questions that come up over the next couple of days, I'll be more than willing to chat with anybody that wants to come back, and we'll have coffee and have some lunch or whatever. So just want to make myself available for that.
Ditto. And after this, we'll be banging through this quick too, so those of us that aren't presenting, happy to take questions on the side too. So I came from a previous presentation tonight. I'm really disappointed I didn't get to go home, change into my Philadelphia PD shirt that says God made cops so that firefighters could have here. So I had to go against my mom. This will be very quick, designed really to just whet your appetite and solicit some questions. This is all for your benefit, so please ask us what you'd like to get out of it. We'll answer your questions best we can for you. So as we mentioned earlier, we are authorized 114 sworn officers now with 26 FTEs that support our operations. So 140 people in the police department. We just tipped over a hiring period on January 1st, which authorized 6 police officers, so we're sitting at 109, correct? Currently at 109. So, and the reason we don't have those filled now is because we are tied largely to the academy, the police academy hiring or training processes that are offered 3 times a year. So we have eligible people that are queued up to be hired here soon and go to the spring academy. Right now we're 5 short of that authorized strength. You can see the breakdown there. The admin division is the only division that's really not represented here tonight. They don't have any cool toys. They do hiring, they do recruiting, training, promotions, transfers, internal investigations, all that kind of stuff. The other 2 divisions that are here is, as Captain Stepper likes to say, the real cops in the patrol division. My roots are in detectives, so I take exception to that. Yes. Full-time equivalent. We have some part-time non-sworn people, but we add them up there. There's 26 total positions. I want to give them a rundown on patrol deployment.
Sure. So, like I said, we work 24 hours a day. 89 people in the patrol division. We currently have 6 squads. Of those 6 squads, they're assigned to 3 different shifts. We have a day shift, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., a mid shift, which comes in at 4:30 till 2:30 in the morning, and then we have a graveyard shift that goes from 9:30 in the evening until 7:30 in the morning. So those mid shifts and graveyards overlap, which what used to be the busiest time. Bar closing used to be probably the PD's busiest time. That has kind of changed a little bit. We have very busy mornings and very busy early evenings, and then we still have that BART crowd. So we're looking at how we're going to rearrange our shifts right now to most effectively help the community and deal with the crime peaks and stuff like that. Currently, of those squads, we have a shift minimum of 5 officers to cover the entire city. The city is, I think, approximately about 36 square miles right now, 75,000 residents, and at one time there could be as few as 5 officers working the streets. Of course, during those overlaps, you have at least 10. Through the help of the council, we were approved an additional 6 officers in the last 2 budgets, which is going to increase our shift minimums to 6. That may not seem like a lot, but when Chief Collier gets into the numbers, the calls for service, you will see how that really, the numbers have continued to grow, and our manpower has not grown on the street. I've been here 28 years. We had a 5-man minimum in 1993 when I started. So it's time for us to grow. The council recognized that and gave us the additional personnel. So that's what we're looking at manpower-wise in the patrol division and how we implement those people.
Our pie chart looks a lot like fires. We have just north of $18 million operating budget, and about $17 million in change goes to personnel. We operate on about $1.1 million operating expenses. So the most valuable resource that we have is our people. It's also the most expensive. I always like to talk when I get the opportunity to tell everybody what is so important to us, and it's public trust. Any police department will be absolutely ineffective if they don't have the trust of the public. And the best way you can build that trust is one-on-one contacts. What we're doing tonight is great. I view it as a supplement to what we do day in and day out. the one-on-one contacts, whether it be through an official call for service, a traffic stop, or some incidental contact downtown or wherever, is the most important way we build trust. One contact at a time, one day at a time. We can't, not everybody in the community interacts with us very often. So we have other little programs built into our operations to reach out and connect with people who we don't deal with routinely to build the trust. Tonight's one of them. It's not on here, but we do a similar version for our department called Citizen Academy. We have a sergeant specifically designed to quality life issues. Of course, the Crime Stoppers program, downtown bicycle officers, school resource officers, and downtown VID officer, a foot officer. That and any other type of special PR type stuff really should come second fiddle, really, to what every call is about. I don't only believe that special programs don't replace just good police work. I think that it would actually it actually hurts you if you treat people poorly one day and the next day they see you out there kissing babies and shaking hands and handing out candy. I think there's a certain amount of hypocrisy that comes with that. So what we're doing tonight's great. All these programs are great. Nothing replaces what is the most important thing, which is one-on-one contact and personal service.
So our policing priorities, which is something that we look at based on the crime statistics, based on what the community voices their concerns to be, and you can see right here that one of them is sexual and domestic violence, another one is human trafficking. If you guys are ever interested in hearing a good story about what we do, join the Citizen Law Enforcement Academy. It's similar to this. In fact, I believe Heather may have stolen our idea after she went through our academy, and she found it very, very interesting and very worth her time. So if you're ever interested in that, currently we do it every other year, but if I can talk the new chiefs and Mike into doing it every year, I think we get a lot of feedback from it, and it's very worthwhile. DUIs, DUIs and DUI crashes. They're not hurting the ones that are committing it, they're hurting the innocent lives that they hit. And so that's been a priority of ours for a number of years. We have, generally speaking, 2 officers dedicated just to do DUIs. But with the manpower issues that we've had, like we're 5 below our staffing right now, those are the first ones that we pull back. It's still a priority for our officers on the street, but we just can't give it the time that it really deserves when we're short-staffed, because we have to answer the calls for service. That is our #1 priority. Drug trafficking, of course. Drugs are an issue in Missoula, Montana. We have issues with heroin and methamphetamine, and a lot of crimes are committed because of the drug crimes. These thefts, these car break-ins you read about. Those people are trying to support their habits. The only way they can do it is by breaking into cars and stealing stuff. Traffic enforcement. Some of you might think that we're just out there to get revenue for the city doing traffic enforcement. We don't see a dime of that. Not 1 cent. It all goes into the general fund. The council and the mayor determine how much money we get to run our operation. Has nothing to do with the revenue from tickets. Basically, what we're trying to do with traffic enforcement is educate drivers, keep the roads safe. The money that's invested into crashes is over the millions. Your car is wrecked, you could be injured, you're going to miss work, it's just phenomenal how many millions of dollars car crashes cost. So our traffic enforcement is out there to educate, and we get new drivers every year, right? So, new problems. And then lastly, quality of life, which Mike already touched on a little bit, these neighborhood disputes and things like that. Abandoned vehicles, abandoned trailers is a new program. There's a bunch of loud parties. I don't know if you have ever had somebody throw a loud party next to your house. You just don't like it. Well, the police show up that night and try to stop it, but then there's the follow-through with either the landlords or the homeowners or the renters or whatever to make sure that it doesn't continue to disrupt your lives. So those are very important issues that we have right now, and those are the ones we focus on.
Calls for service. This last year we just crossed over about 61,000 calls for service. You can see the general uptick on that over the last, 6 years. Criminal citations and arrests are down a little bit. I can tell you that part of that, like what Scott said about not having 2 DUI officers filled, that could account for, I would say 600 DUIs potentially between those two in a year pretty easily. Not having those filled hurt some of that productivity. Felony investigations have tapered just a little bit, but we're still, last couple of years, right about 1,200 felony investigations a year. About 100 a month, and we have 15 investigators and a co-located UMPD investigator. So they have their work cut out for them, and they're busy. Mental health, frankly, I'm a little surprised to see the dip in 2019. It feels like that's a never-ending wave to us. We go on all kinds of welfare checks and kind of bizarre circumstances, and this type of stuff, or just outright suicide attempts. My kind of theory on that is reduced funding at the state that kind of a lot of social services has trickled onto local first responders, and we're seeing the people on the streets that are not supported with proper care. Last couple things is some of the progress we've made and some of the challenges that I see. Most recently was the building at Catlin and taking care of our evidence situation. This is a photograph from the old evidence vault at City Hall. You can just see that it is literally piled on top of itself. We had with pipes above it. It was just packed, literally packed. I think it was impressive that our property clerk could always find something. We would do random spot checks and say, "Go find me this," and he'd find it, which was great. But it was really poor working conditions for him and inefficient. So when we moved to Catlin, this is a purpose-designed evidence vault. The architects that we worked with visited a couple of other agencies on how to do this right, and it really turned out nice. So we have 63,000 and change pieces of physical property. We brought in 10,000 or so in 2019. The most efficient way to manage property is one piece in, one piece out, right? Like a bar that's full. You can't let somebody in until somebody else goes, but it doesn't always work that way. And over the years, we've built up 60-something thousand pieces of evidence. But these mass storage shelving is really the way to go. That you can compact them, and then you just you unroll them to get to the property that you need. This is cold storage here, refrigerator and freezer space. And the next 2 doors down that you can just kind of barely see there, those are high-value vaults. So inside the overall property vault, there's these high-value vaults, and it's basically things like high-end jewelry, guns, drugs, and cash. So there's an additional level of security that goes into that. It's, of course, all tracked with your proximity card and video. A couple other pictures of the new storage. Items are stored not by case, but by like items. So like these are all long guns here, tools and such. Anything that would fit in these cases, smaller items like wallets and so on. It's the most efficient way to package things rather than to package them by incident. Biggest challenge we've talked a little bit about earlier. I think the 2 biggest impacts on our calls for service, and particularly our violent crime, is methamphetamine, and mental health is is kind of a close second on this the volume of crimes. But heroin has made a huge resurgence back into filling the gap of prescription opioids, but methamphetamine is number 1. We attend a daily briefing with supervisors from all 3 divisions, and I think we could argue that not a day goes by that you don't have meth-related cases on that briefing. So it's a real thing. We are participating in a multi-agency drug task force. They do great work, but there's a lot to it. We can't arrest our way out of it, as they say. That's very true. So. Big challenge to us in operations is technology. Technology is great. We solve a lot of crimes. People looking at the camera for us really nicely works out great. Plate readers in other states that give us information. A lot of private security companies. The evidence that we create through body-worn video and in-car video, it's all great. The other side of the edge to that, other side of the sword to that is that it is really expensive and it creates just massive amounts of data. So one of our investigators right now is working a surreptitious viewing case where this guy is using his camera to film people in public places and expose himself. And she just downloaded his phone. I got to get this right. had 41,000 PDF pages of data, had 43,000 images on it, and 9,000 videos on it. So once we download that, we own it. And that goes, we have to store that, we have to retain it for discovery, and depending on the classification of crimes, sex crimes and homicide, basically you own forever. And so it is expensive, it takes a ton of storage. We buy the storage in terabytes, and we buy a bunch at one time and just barely kind of keeping up with it. So on top of that is the actual person that does it. We have one person who's really highly qualified to do this kind of stuff. He's a detective, and so we lean on him for a little bit of casework too. We really need to get him out of casework because he supports everybody else's technology needs. The standard right now with judges and juries is that, what's the technology say? You got a video of it, you got a Snapchat of it, they expect that, we have to respond to it, and right now the volume is such that we can't do it well with the person we have. So we'd like to backfill that, get him out of the casework, have one person dedicated to this, and so we can manage it. So that's the quick down and dirty.
Yeah.
Definitely will be
We'll
available.
probably take some questions. One thing I like to just point out, I mean, it is daily, which is a great thing. I believe that police and fire, we are shoulder to shoulder on the streets every single day, and we work really well together. One of the greatest success examples I'd like to share just real quick with you is our active attack, somewhat known as active shooter. We went through that training. Chief Davis was the point on for our fire department, but it was a community-based. This is the largest thing in 28 years that I've seen. Common goal for an active shooter, active attack training. We were able to secure some grant money, and that brought that training into this community. This had a cross reach, and what I'm really proud of this is not just police and fire, but this was highway patrol, this was fish and game, this was sheriff, university. It was all throughout the community. It was, it's like it just gave you chills right now. It was the largest training that we've ever seen. We'll continue to work on that, but it was just a real huge success story. A lot of hours, a lot of training, and as we see, it seems like weekly anymore that we're seeing that somewhere in the nation, and we've had actually some pretty close calls here in our town. So, but a great success story of how we train together, live together, and provide that level of service to you guys every day. So, questions? Let's just kind of open that up to whatever we can chat about.
Brian? Go ahead.
Nothing on the list of the major things you guys deal with surprised me other than human trafficking. Can you tell me just like a 20-second picture of what that looks like? People from here being taken elsewhere, people just moving through Missoula, or I didn't realize that.
Mike can probably, since he really is the detective captain.
Yeah, it's my real job. Yeah, we have legitimate confirmed cases of local kids, unfortunately, it's going to be heartbreaking, that have been coerced into going to other states with promise of things like being introduced to recording artists, becoming a model, all these kind of great promises. They get isolated from their family and friends, no communication. They get essentially brainwashed not to trust the police, and unfortunately, they get trafficked. And it's a disturbing topic. It's a reality. Detective Baker does a great job, and he has a whole litany of educating the public, parents and particularly about some good preventive measures. His takeaway, I'll just ruin it for him right now, his takeaway is that there is not one legitimate reason for your teenage child to have their phone on in their bedroom at night, period. And I like it. So, yeah, it's a real thing. We've had a few cases successfully prosecuted, and we're just like any other community. We have the same crimes as other community at a smaller volume.
In the back?
Do you know the percentage of men and women that work for both departments?
We do. Do you?
Yes. I'll round up to 6%.
We're at 15% women, which is the highest in the state, way above the national average. So if you want to get into law enforcement and you're a woman, come and talk to us.
What if you're too old?
There is no age limit. Cannot discriminate on age. Fire does.
There we go. You do have to pass this one.
Kim and then Eric.
I want to ask if there are 6 officers on the road and something happens that needs 10, 20. I think of one instance, I think in a trailer park, which I saw it only in the newspaper, certainly little robots came and there was a difficult situation where more officers were needed. Are they pulled back from where are they? How are they pulled together?
Well, within the department, every officer that's in the department is expected to be able to act and support any other part of it. So any detective would be expected to put on a vest and grab a radio and go to work if they need
From
to.
at home, then out to
I'm sorry?
They leave their home and then go into...
Not necessarily in that instance that you're talking about. So we had some school resource officers that broke away from the school that they were doing to come and help. We have our traffic division who quit making traffic stops to come and help. So we have this backfill, and this crime is committed during the day. We have a lot of resources to draw from. When it happens at 3 o'clock in the morning, then you only have those people that are available on the street, which could be a minimum of 5. If something happens big enough, then we start calling people in. And we start waking them up and telling either the day shift crew to come in early to help backfill, or we'll just call in more resources. If it's a big enough crime that you need detectives, we'll call them in too. So every one of us is basically at the ready for 24 hours.
And other agencies assist. So the sheriff's office, the highway patrol, university police, U.S. Marshals, all those people that are around would happily come upon request.
We have those same auto-aid agreements in fire, our neighbors next door, Missoula Rural, and when we get busy, they'll take our calls. If they have a structure fire, we'll go move into their stuff. Our folks come from during the day, similar to what Chief Hoffman was saying, is we've got 3 mechanics, we've got 2 training officers, and we've got 5 firefighters in the fire bureau. Again, all cross-trained where they can not pick up a gun, but they can pick up an axe and they can put on their bunkers and they can go to work. And that is the value that we really see of a fully trained person that is able just to maybe excel in something that they're more interested in. But the same, being able to do the job when called.
Public safety is our priority. I mean, 100%. We give up being home with our kids. We give up their birthday parties, Christmas, games, whatever, because this is what we signed up to do and this is what we love to do. So public safety is our thing. We drop what we are doing to help out. You had a question over here?
Yeah, those year-on-year statistics of the crime, what accounts for those fluctuations, the spikes and everything? That seems weird.
If we could predict crime, we'd be rich. But the problem is any given day. I mean, take that thing over on Cooley. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. Nothing's going on, and all of a sudden a robbery occurs, and we go over there, and now we're face to face with the guy with the gun. I would say 10 o'clock in the morning is probably one of our low crime hours, but you just never know what these people are doing. Drugs are involved, they might not have slept the whole night. So it's just unpredictable. And that's one of the things that I love about this job is that you come to work and it's not going to be like yesterday and tomorrow's going to be different. It's just fun every day. So.
Eric and then Dave and then Pat.
There's been a need in some other parts of the country for patrol officers to wear body cams, I guess they're called.
Yep.
Has there been any need for that here? And how do you deal with all that footage and data?
Well, he touched on the data. Captain Stepper, does every patrol officer have a body camera right now?
We have a bank. We utilize a system called WatchGuard. It's our provider. So when an officer shows up for briefing, they will go into the report room. There's a computer there. They sign in. That system logs a camera to them. It assigns them their name and their badge number. They wear that camera or device throughout the shift, and at the end of the shift, they put it back in the bank, and it downloads all of that information onto the system. So we do utilize them. I think they're an invaluable tool. We talked earlier about data storage. some stuff out there says that a police officer in a patrol car with an in-car camera and a body-worn camera can accrue about 1.3 terabytes of data per year. Once again, it's that storage and the cost of kind of keeping up with that, but I think they're invaluable.
I think right now we have 34 body-worn cameras that we cycle. So not everyone is assigned to an officer. They just put them on when they come in. It's a nice system. And then our cars also have cameras on them too. And so they wear these. If there's anything that happens on their shift, we can go to the download and see what happened. We have to save them for any crimes that were committed or any statements that were made. That's when you get into the large amounts of storage. So, yeah, we
Dave?
Yeah. A number of years ago, there was anti-meth campaigns, a number of billboards, and I think the Lifeguard Group and other anti-trafficking awareness groups are going to roll out some other billboards coming up. Did you feel like that helped with the anti-meth and all those different? They had some art contests.
Yeah, I think so. They're not easy to look at, right?
No.
But there was two things going on at that time. There was the Not Even Once campaign you're talking about,
Right.
Montana campaign, and then legislation that knocked down all the access to the precursors for cooking your own meth. So those two things in concert, I think, made a marked difference on methamphetamine. We still don't have the precursors thing is still in effect. So we really don't have labs. I can't remember the last lab we get. Virtually all the meth you see in Montana is coming probably from a super lab in Mexico up the west coast and down I-90. But the fact that the Montana Meth Project has slowed off so much, I think that is an impact on why we've seen this uptick in methamphetamine again, because people just it's a new batch of kids growing up all the time, and I think that message, although a little bit graphic, I think is effective.
Patrick?
My question has to do with the amount of hazmat that's going in and out of Missoula, either by rail or by truck. Mostly stuff that you can't see. And are we having any kind of, are there major concerns, and how are you training for that?
You bet. Chief Hughes is our we share our hazardous materials response team. We're a combined team with Missoula Rural Fire Department, and we have 12 folks within the department itself. Fortunately, we don't have a high incidence of hazardous materials responses here in our local area. We get a lot of responses on the east side with the Bakken crude and stuff spilling off of the rail. Seems like, even though it's flatter out that way, there's more accidents, and I don't know, bigger spans to fall asleep, and they experience a lot more incidents out that way. In preparation, we've got monthly trainings that we facilitate. One thing that has kind of dried up over the last couple of years is state funding for our hazardous materials teams. We used to have infusions that would go directly to fund training for each of the teams. There are 6 regional teams within the state. Each of the major municipalities provided team members that made up these individual teams. And the state took away funding, which provided the equipment and the training to supplement these teams. And now we have to find it within our own operating budgets to make up that loss. And it becomes difficult to meet the demands of our training requirements to maintain technician training level hazardous materials folks. So we're doing quite a bit with a lot less. And it's just, the opportunity comes at some point that legislation has to vote on a measure that would restore the funding. I would just ask some support from local folks. You never know when an Alberton derailment will happen in anybody's neighborhood.
Were you informed when hazardous, or do you know when hazardous material is shipped through?
No, that's something that, unless we get a manifest from a shipping agency that's relative to
an accident or a spill, we don't know what's going through our community day in and day out. It would probably astound you what is going through.
We have good partners. MRL, Montana Rail Link, have been a strong partner with us, so we're with them every month and working with training and opportunities. One other partner that we have is Rocky Mountain Lab, which is down in Hamilton. They're a part of our hazmat team, and we train. Every year we have an exercise. We exercise with the airport as well, and work on those hazmat materials and things.
Rebecca, you had a question?
Yeah, thanks. I was just wondering with what you see and what you do, if you get mental health support, or like if there's some type of follow-up.
For our folks?
Yeah, for you as professionals.
You bet. Chief Davis?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's something that we struggle with. The city does provide a EAP program that city employees have access to, and that's police and fire included. I myself am trying to expand on that program and trying to find some better resources specifically for first responders and the types of incidents that we have to deal with, and couple that with everyday life and stressors of that nature. So I'm working on expanding that program. It's kind of in the spotlight right now across the nation for military, police and fire, and mental health and mental well-being of those members. Here at the fire department, we've created an in-house peer support group. So we have 4 of our firefighters that went to specialized training in peer support, and so that's going to be at that brother-to-brother level, that kind of that first line of defense. So those 4 guys are doing a great job of keeping tabs on everybody and just making sure everyone's doing okay, and trying to help them navigate if they need any additional mental health or any wellness assistance or anything like that. So it's a struggle that for years and years, firemen and police, kind of speaking for you guys, have always had that. We're the superheroes, nothing can bother us, and if you say something bothering you, you're looked at as being weak or not able to handle the job. And over years and years of doing that, we're realizing that that's not a great approach. It's better to recognize that what we see is not normal, and to try to build that resilience and that education and build upon it to make us stronger, rather than just compartmentalize and just ignore it and try to take care of it in other avenues, whether that's with your home life or alcohol or anything. So it's a great question. We're doing everything we can to make sure our local first responders are taken care of. We're trying to get better programs in place in Missoula, and we're doing great work as individual departments trying to make sure we're taking care of our own guys and making sure they have the resources that they need to make sure that
we share chaplains. They ride both along with us for some of those critical incidents, and just being able to get to know our brothers and sisters in blue, and also that ability to, one of the factors that I know that I've seen in the last few years is our combat veterans that are coming back, and those folks are coming back after our years of being engaged throughout the world, and they're coming back, and we're seeing them as new recruits, and that stuff that they're carrying with them spills in and can trigger that. So we're trying to be as proactive as we can to make sure we're taking care of our folks, and they can not only have a good quality of life at work, but also outside of work, and support them.
All right, so I think we got 2 more questions. Brian?
So I was at my son's senior start high school next year, and I did see the spot for the police officer there. When did the police enter the high schools? What triggered that, and what do they do with their time while they're at the high schools?
Late 80s, started what we call the pro.
I graduated from Sentinel in '95, and there was not an officer physically. They actually have a police officer there now.
This is awesome.
Yeah, so
I guess
so we started out with like one officer was doing the schools, all of them. That has grown now with an agreement with Missoula Public Schools, now to where we have 3 in the Big Sky Sentinel and Hellgate. We have 1 for the middle schools. We have a safety officer who works for School District 1, one of our employees, but they're offsetting the costs by paying us something for that. So we've actually grown from where we used to have 1 officer who would visit all the schools to embedding officers in the schools. And what that did is we started responding so many times to the schools that it was taking officers off the street, tying up their time to go to the schools. And it just became more efficient, cost and management-wise, to to actually put them in the schools. So we went from 1 covering Missoula now to 5 covering the schools.
And is that truancy, drugs, listening for the next party, or what?
A lot of it's education, a lot of it is presence. These kids get to know the officer as a human being. You know, a lot of people look at officers and go, oh, they're, you know, bad, don't like them, they're not here to help you. But we kind of changed that philosophy by putting them in the schools so these kids can get to know them and know what we do and why we do it. So it's really building relationships and educating these kids. Plus, there's the deterrent. You know, the truancy and stuff like that, that's really handled by the school. But what we're there to do is make sure that it's a safe learning environment for everybody at school. So just the presence has made a big difference. Plus the fights, the drugs, that kind of stuff. That's what that officer tries to handle so that the officers on the street don't have to keep going back to the schools for those kind of things.
Scott, is that what we call community policing?
In part.
In part.
You know, anytime you're working with the community, whichever organization it is or whatever they want to see from their police department, working with them is community policing. Working with the West Side neighborhood, you know, around the Powerello Center, you know, that's community policing because we're not sitting in this ivory tower saying, well, we know what you need. No, we're listening to the community. They're telling us, this is what we need. We act on it. We look at the results and say, we can do better, or we need to move on to another area or something like that. So that's community policing. And working in the schools is somewhat like that because we're listening to the parents and the kids and the faculty, and we're working towards making it a safe learning environment for them. So it's a good reason.
I think I heard you say that you do have chaplains available for your personnel. Do either of the departments have a relationship with local clergy groups or whatever to bring in clergy to respond to the citizens' needs after a particular event? Is that an established program?
Well, I think our chaplain would be first and foremost.
They do that as well.
So your chaplain would do that as
Yeah,
well?
their services are for our people and victims' families.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. All right.
There is some other stuff you guys got to do,
I
right?
know. So I want to ask you how we are on time. Because I counted 3 more hands at least. And
Well, our
five.
burn tower is made of concrete, so that fire can keep burning and it won't burn down. That's one good thing, but the fire is lit out, the fire is lit out there. But let's do a half a dozen more questions real quick.
I wanted to, in the big event, football game or concert in the Washington Stadium, how many officers would that need to make that safe, or?
Well, the upcoming Guns N' Roses concert. Gonna be there? Oh, there. What's that?
Opportunity for pot, yeah.
No.
$100 a pop.
Oh, I was calling that. We're always consistent.
In cooperation with those large events, like the university or even when we were doing what's now called the Paddlehead, right, the Osprey Field and that sort of thing, the people that put on those concerts are tasked with having enough EMTs, enough security, and so they handle the basics, and then together we have an action plan wrapped around that of what to do in case of an incident. So does that answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Heather.
Go ahead.
So I want to commend you all for, I keep hearing the word training. I work in bicycling advocacy, and it's my real job. I work at Adventure Cycling, and so one of the things that we've been really training ourselves and the people that we work with is calling things crashes instead of accidents, because it's a neutral term that doesn't, because when you say accident, it infers no one's at fault, and usually there is something that's at fault, and there's usually a human error attributed to that somewhere in there. It's just a more neutral term that I really like to hear when I speak to people. The other thing that I was curious about, and this is both a personal and just a curiosity in your trainings, I have a mother-in-law that has a form of Alzheimer's, and I've been doing a lot of myself training in Alzheimer's awareness. And one of the key things is, working with our medical community and also our emergency response services on Alzheimer awareness. That leads me to the greater question of diffusement training and, trying to break down the heightened energy that you incur in an emergency like the one that you were speaking of earlier. And so I was just wondering if you could speak to that training, how you bring the energy down and talk people out of, those kind of terrible situations where guns or knives or other violent behaviors for people and other officers.
Yeah, well, I'd say, culturally, I'd say from day one, that's part of something they're constantly getting as a release to force, is de-escalation and kind of defusing things. There's more formal training in that we're in the process of expanding the program on crisis intervention. And it's all about recognizing people in crisis, people with cognitive disability and that type of thing, and getting them to de-escalate and not escalate to the person that's acting out. We have another in-house program called Verbal Judo, which is all about that, which is it's about getting people to a point where we've exhausted every verbal option, every de-escalation option available before basically what we call hands-on. Before at some point you have to do what we say, and but verbal judo and crisis intervention training, and really, like I said, that whole culture of trying of force avoidance and de-escalation is a real thing. We're proud of the force history that we have. When we use force, we're confident that it's going to be. We review everyone first of all. We're confident in the review of use of force. You'll see all kinds of de-escalation efforts in there, unless the situation just doesn't warrant it. Sometimes there's no time to talk, and that happens. But
follow up on
the shooting up on Cooley. I don't know if any of you are aware of that, but they engaged with that guy for like 25 minutes until ultimately he made the decision that they needed to react.
So I think that's important for us to know what you do on a professional level, but I think a lot of people in our community also look at all these stats and wonder, well, what could I be doing differently? So could you talk about what Officer Ethan Smith has talked about in terms of de-escalation techniques that he goes into businesses to teach them how to deal with it?
Well, part of his stuff is de-escalation. Are you talking about like the run?
He talked about a program.
He mentioned that he was going into some businesses in the downtown area and talking to them about how they could better prepare themselves if someone comes in off the street.
With a mental health issue?
Yeah, so Ethan does a lot of different things. Step-head and run, lock, fight, and all these terms that are used right now. So what his thing is as crime prevention, he will go into these businesses and he'll look for problem areas. He'll look for escape routes for people. He really is trying to educate the businesses and protect themselves if we got an intruder coming in or just somebody angry. I mean, we do this at City Hall all the time because generally people come in there not with a great attitude, either to go to court or talk to an attorney or whoever it may be. So Ethan is tasked with, as the crime prevention person, not just to help us reduce crime, but help the community in the different aspects of it by going to businesses, by giving them things to look for. I mean, if you're a homeowner and you have shrubs that are grown up to your windows, that's not good. That's a place for a bad guy to hide. You know, we drive by, hit our spotlight, but we can't see behind that bush. So he'd come in and say, I recommend that you pull all those shrubs out to make it a clear view to your house, that you have motion lights that go off when somebody is moving around. Those are the kind of things he does, and it's the same way with businesses. You know, if you have a business that operates in the evening when it's dark or something like that, and you ask your employees to take the garbage out to the dumpster, is that lit? Is that a point where they could be attacked? Even where they park, you know, matters to the safety of the employees. So Ethan does a vast amount of education as our crime prevention officer, and I hope that's kind of what you were leaning towards.
Yes, it was.
And if you have a need for crime prevention, Ethan is available to talk, do presentations and things like that, even like he does visits to businesses to help them. So.
I'm curious if the police department has any say in anything pertaining to citywide planning or development. For example, there is the fire code, but I'm wondering, like, if I wanted to build a pod that's 20 times the size of the current pod, but it fits in zoning, is there ever a space for the police department to say, hey, that's a bad idea, it's bringing too many people in one area, or whatever the situation might be? Do you speak in development or planning of the city? Or do you just have to take whatever shows up?
So across the city, we have division levels and a leadership path.
ALT or PAT?
PAT. So it's a member from each division head, and we have weekly meetings. We meet every Tuesday at 9 o'clock, and we're brought up to those things. Then we have ALT, which is the second level, kind of down that's inclusive, and then what projects going on in and around that, and that comes in. We get updates from developmental services, we get updates from the police department, we get updates from the fire department, what's going on, and it keeps everybody on task. And then when if those are vetted through that, if you were wanting to do that, there would certainly be conversation that all of us have a seat at that table. Yes, sir.
So we see more on the news about communities having to evacuate for one reason or another, and I wondered what kind of training or preparation or discussions you all have regarding the city evacuating, part of the city evacuating, what challenges there would be in that, and then what you might see as, for this area, the reason that would happen.
Well, we've done scenarios for evacuations. Specifically, I recall Rattlesnake, because there's no way out other than Van Buren and Greeno. So we've had to do, through thought process and exercises, if there was a train derailment there, some kind of spill, how do we evacuate Rattlesnake safely? And we've done that with other areas too.
We see that in wildland season. We have specific evacuation plans for Rattlesnake. We have evacuation plans for Grant Creek. Those are tuned up. Adrienne Beck is a phenomenal steward of that. She holds that. She's the Office of Emergency Management, and we work with her down. And I say down because her office is down in the basement, but we work with her, and we have evacuation plans for all that. And then from there, we just work together. If there's a sniper, if there's happening an incident, we can evacuate those, and we divide those up. And how we do that, just real quick, is like a hot zone, a warm zone, and a cold zone. And different things, different chemicals will have different zones on that. And maybe that's hot zone is 2 blocks, and maybe the warm zone is that. And then we create entry points and exit points in those, and we control those, and then we just back to there. And then as the incident stabilizes, then we shoot that back.
How is the public informed if that situation ever arose?
So there's 2 means of that, and I'm sure I get the verbiage right. So there's the means alert, which is broadcast out through radio, TV, the screens that you see on there, and that is through our Office of Emergency Management. You can punch that button, you get that. The next one is the rave alert, which is a broadcast and certainly more pointed, which you can receive over your phones, and they can, working in cooperation, and our partners with the city currently is Verizon, but they take over those towers, they point that out into that zone, and they'll ping every phone that's in there, and they can do that. Geographically, through 911, they can in, I think it's a minute or so, they can graph with a mouse, click, 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 and if you're in the Smart 911 center, in the Smart 911 database, and then they can call everybody in that group. Classic example is a couple years ago we had a fire out on Frenchtown. Horses were out down onto the freeway, and they just ping that, just sort of geographical space on there, hit that, calls everything that's registered, and then in there, they alert that area of what's going on in Mills. So, yeah. Yeah.
I get to ask?
Yeah.
I kind of feel like this is a 6-year-old's question, but sometimes I notice if you call because somebody is ill, like the ambulance comes, and a fire truck, and the chief of police, and you're not the chief of police, but like all these different things. Could you explain what vehicle is showing up when you make a phone call and why they're all showing up? Like last night on my street, 3 fire trucks and an ambulance and a cop and the other Chevy kind of fire thing. But I'm really curious about this.
We drive Fords, by the way.
Okay, Fords. Sorry. I should have known that, right? I'm
That's
very
why
curious.
we drive Dodge Charger.
It all has to do with the call type. And if you get a medical call, depending on the medical call, so we have, what you'll learn about in a little bit is like CPR call, a medical CPR, and that's classified in a whole different, you'll see that hit crew. But if it's a medical call, you'll get an ambulance and a fire engine.
Why does the fire engine come for a medical call?
Well, it's part of the customer service that we provide, and because geographically throughout the city, our location, most of the time we'll beat that ambulance there. And when you're having a bad day, you want someone there as quick as possible. And so,
And your paramedics,
Yep.
EMTs.
Yep.
And Jeff, can you explain that the ambulance is a private company?
What's that?
Explain that the ambulance is a private company.
Yes. The Missoula Emergency Services is a private ambulance company, and so they charge that. They provide transport in the city, but so your tax dollars get you help. The reason we bring that red fire truck is because we bring our toolbox, and so we bring our big red toolbox so that if we're done with you, and then all of a sudden we get a call over here, we're always prepared.
Okay.
And so that's why we do that. A third of the time, we have 2 calls going on at the same time in this town. So that's why you get that level of service for that. If you have 3 engines and a police car and an ambulance, in my mind, to have that quantity of folks, it sounds like a CPR call.
There was more than that on South Reserve on my way here tonight.
From a crash?
I don't know, I couldn't tell.
Yeah, there was a crash. Well, actually, I think Montana law changed it from accident to crash years ago. So we have crash investigators, not accident. Because there is a reason why it happened, and it was no accident.
What is the police department doing in response to the epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous children?
We're all in. We have very few of those cases in the city. Most of them were in Charlotte, but 100% in run to the ground. I can tell you, this weekend we conducted another search on that case. So it's just north of 2 years old or so, and just about 2 years old, and it's still actively being worked. So, aside from taking every one of those cases and running them all to the ground, again, Detective Baker does a lot of participation in the public awareness on that. He's been involved in some broadcast stuff that's been shown nationally about our efforts on that, as well as some local live presentations.
Last question, Kathy.
No pressure. I'm excited for the burning. I'll make this quick. So I just generally assume that anything associated with mental health care is sorely underfunded, and it's something that I would love to get more involved with. I don't know how to get access to information that I could use to make the case to the city council or to whoever provides your funding. I'm imagining that there are just kind of like frequent flyers of people in our communities who, because of their illness, are just cycling through like mad and not getting access to mental health services that can break them out of that cycle and therefore take them out of the system. All this to say, I would love any guidance about where to get information, what organizations I can talk to, like what I can do or what anybody in this room can do to try to help break this cycle where people are just sick. And I'm sure you guys don't have the money necessary to get at these root causes, but Anything to help with this despair a little bit before the fire party?
I'll come find you.
Okay.
I'll talk to you after we go through some of the...
Okay, I know it's big.
Yeah.
We're certainly available as you guys read through scenarios, and on that, just pull us aside, we'll be out and around. If you want other questions that we didn't get, let's ask those. Give us a chance to grab your coats.
Yes, it'll be perfect to sit here. Just make sure you dress. We'll be outside for about...
Some of them off.
Yeah. We'll be outside for probably 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and then we'll come back inside and we'll break into our groups. All right.
Right, fire this thing off. Better view. Oh yeah, can't hear. Might dodge some of the smoke. Hey, close door right there.
In or out?
Okay, so we'll try and explain a little bit of what they're doing, guys, if you guys are curious. So when we first get on scene of a structure fire, we're going to look around and see if we see anybody that has any kind of valuable information. They're going off the fact that it's nighttime right now. Most people are in their homes at nighttime. The fire captain is going to come out. He's going to do a full lap around the building. You can hear him talking and what he's going to be doing. He has 3 other fire trucks and a ladder truck. Tonight we're only going to have 2 fire trucks and 1 ladder truck. The ladder truck obviously is on the ladder. We send them to the roof to get the smoke out. If we make the smoke out, we can make the inside a lot more sustainable for people in case of hurting fire. Little kids like to hide, younger kids like to hide, so we try and make that area a lot more available for them to live in. In a couple of minutes, I'll be able to open these doors up so you guys can take a look inside, see what it looks like. Right now, our temperatures at the ceiling are probably 800 degrees, and then down towards the floor, they're probably around 100 degrees on that. So a person can still live in that, no problem. And you can see with all the smoke coming out of it, that is burning pretty good. What's that? No, we want to get out. So think about heat rises, right? So if you have to go downstairs, what are you going through? You're going through a tunnel of heat, right? So you want to stay low, that's what we teach kids, right? We teach them to crawl out, find a window. Find a window and crawl out. So we don't want people find, especially in a basement. Basements are miserable. What's in your basement? A lot of stuff. It's hard stuff to find people.
You want to show them that roof prop?
Yeah, so if you guys can kind of slowly walk around here, and you'll see on the up here where guys are getting ready to cut in, and then
Go ahead.
So obviously we don't have keys to your house, right? So we can't just open your door. So we have to force a door before we can even go inside. That's cool to see. Hey, you to force that door? So right now we're packing up at the front of the house. We already tried the front door, it's locked because we all lock our doors nowadays. That's why we always have tools with us. Our tools are big, heavy pieces of metal to get into your house. We make a lot of noise. So that door simulates basically just a deadbolt. We can change use that door to simulate like a commercial building, and it's a lot harder. Deadbolts, you can get through pretty quickly. So now they're going to stay low, right? We talked about them crawling, staying low. See where the smoke level is? So they're going to stay low. Now they're going to go search for victims and the fire. You guys want to come over here? We'll show you inside.
Except it's building on fire, we're going to extinguish it. We're going to break in and show us how they...
Okay, so you guys see where the smoke level is? It's just lower than chest height. Again, that's why we want you guys to crawl anywhere you go. Right now I just made a huge bend, so all that smoke's going to come billowing out. If anybody wants to take this camera and go kind of walk up, here's the start of line. Come on up here.
Yeah, you guys can start taking ladders down.
Any more pictures? Okay, hang on. So when you hit that fire, all that water It's just a cost thing. So we are required to do 2 live burns a year. This doesn't count as one of them. We have to get 100 guys, and that's my job. I'm the training officer. We have to get 100 guys through 2 live burns a year. And this is pretty man intensive. So after we burn, we have to wash all this stuff. We have to shower ourselves. We have to go they're wet, and everything gets, like you saw that steam, they're going to come out, they're cold, they're going to be wet after a while once they cool off. So, thank you guys. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the show.
Well, thanks for coming, guys.
All right, you guys are all the one. So we're going to talk about, kind of Brad, one of our chiefs mentioned earlier, pit crew CPR, which it is kind of a fancy name for like the new way, new as in being for our department the last probably 5 years or so, the way we started implementing doing CPR, and it's really increased our survivability rates for people in, VFib or VTAC. So that's kind of like our big success right now with CPR. So what I handed out is just kind of a little flow chart to show you what we do, and then I'll just like walk you through it, and then Dave's going to chime in a little bit too about the history of CPR to start, and then what we're doing, and then we'll kind of just explain what that pit crew CPR is compared to, like what we used to do. So.
Does anybody here know CPR or taken a CPR class? Nice. We offer those twice a month at our fire station, so that's another service we provide there. But basically, just kind of the history of CPR, like in my time in the fire service, we barely ever used to save anybody who went into cardiac arrest. Like you step back 20 years, like we were so surprised when we got somebody back from a cardiac arrest, we didn't really know what to do with them. Right, Troy? Remember that? It's like, they actually work. So just kind of gradually over time, the American Heart Association does quite a bit of research, and we try and stay up with that and follow it. They have us really focusing on our compressions and never getting off the compressions, and that's what this pit crew CPR that Aaron is going to tell you about here really focuses on. This mannequin has been part of our success. We can let you guys all have a whirl with her to see how proficient you are with your CPR. But she gives us real-time feedback on our compressions. And we also have a new device that we want to get out there. This lets us know when our compressions are just the perfect depth, not too deep and not too shallow. It's a real fine line, and it's been hard to measure in the past. Like the American Heart Association said, like a third of the chest you want to compress, or at least 2 inches and not more than 2.4 inches. But I mean, you can't really tell with your hands what you're doing, so hopefully this is going to help us really fine-tune this. And it does take quite a bit of force, because you're basically just squeezing blood out of the heart every time, instead of like that perfect pump that you have going. We're just smashing it out with our hands. But we want to give them good perfusion of their blood without breaking all their ribs. So, I mean, it's kind of happy medium we're shooting for there. So the pit crew CPR, with particular cardiac arrest in VTAC or VFib rhythms, we pretty much get everybody back with a pulse and a blood pressure to get them to the hospital with this new CPR. So Aaron can walk you through the steps, and I think we'll have a crew kind of demonstrate that, and then we can turn you loose on the mannequin.
Yeah, it's like Dave said, so if you guys have taken or you take CPR in the recent or near future, basically we're just teaching compression only. So what the AHA, the American Heart Association, recognize that compressions are the most important thing. Like Dave said, 20 years ago they were doing, all these great other interventions like medications and things like that, but when you stop doing compressions or when your heart beats, your blood pressure drops off because it is non-existent. So doing those compressions is what is perfusing your body, your brain, your organs with blood, right? So with the little guy on one side, if we're looking at that, even though it's position 2, we'll just start with position 2 as our first thing we talk about. But basically, so what we do is, and somebody had talked about it earlier, of how many people they saw on their street with fire engines, ambulances, and all that. So to a CPR call, we send 2 fire trucks, our battalion chief, an ambulance, and then usually officers also show up because of that when somebody dies, whether we get them back or not, the law enforcement needs to investigate that.
So it's a ton of people, right? So when we're on the fire truck, the first due, when I say first due, I mean whether it's the ambulance that gets there, but usually it's the fire truck that gets there first. Our compressor person is that position number 2. They go directly, find that patient. If that patient is on a bed or a couch or something like that, they get them onto a hard surface, because if you're doing compressions on something bouncy, the person's bouncing and you're not pumping that hard. So we get them on a hard workable surface, and then also we try to drag them into a place that, is more open, so we can actually set up all of our stuff and work and do a good job doing that. So that position 2 person, first thing, they don't take any equipment off the fire truck. They probably will now that we're trying to get this device funded and stuff, and we're hoping to carry them on each fire truck, so that then that compressor can take that one piece of equipment. But they just get right in there, start doing compressions. We do compressions at a rate of 100 a minute. And then, like Dave was saying, hopefully with this device, but then just through our training as well, just being able to do like that, a good depth, but not finding that sweet spot, right? Like, want to do effective compressions, but not too hard where we're doing extra damage that might be unnecessary. So that person starts there. Then the second person comes in, then we'll jump over to this position 1. That's called our code team leader. Typically, that's going to be our highest trained personnel, medical personnel. All firefighters, mostly the paid departments in the state, but definitely for us in the city, we're all EMTs at a minimum. And I think all of our EMTs are fully endorsed, meaning we can give IVs and check blood sugars and use monitors. But we also have a paramedic, so a paramedic would be the ideal person to be that code team leader. And basically they're going to take our life pack, which these guys are kind of getting our... Hey Josh, you want to wave? So Josh there has our life pack. That I think is like a $30,000 little machine.
$30,000. It's all very expensive.
$30,000, I thought I was right. So that code team leader grabs that pack. They're going to turn it on. There's a metronome that we can push, and it's just to kind of keep the compressor to give that person, the patient, compressions at 100 a minute, and then so that we're on track. We don't want to do them too slow. We don't want to do them too fast. And so with adrenaline and just a lot going on, it's just we have a machine that just gives us a little click, 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 and so we do that to stay on track. They'll also attach like fast patches, which you watch like medical shows on TV, or you think like they got the paddles and they're like clear. Those are just stickers, or if you guys are familiar with AEDs that are at airports, ice rinks, things like that. That's what they're putting on these fast patches, and that's what delivers the shock. They're going to interpret the rhythm when we do a rhythm check. So all that's happening meanwhile, the first person's just giving compressions, right? So they get them hooked up to the monitor. They're going to assess that rhythm, see what's going on. If they have time, they can start doing like IV stuff to help with possible drug therapies that we could later do. And then there's some check sheets that we'll go over later that if that person, when we say ROSC, we're talking about if they get a pulse back on their own. So basically, if they get their heart rate back, then there's some different things we'll do, including transport them. So that code team leader we have as position 1. We already talked about 2. Third person is that airway person. They take our airway bag. They go set up by the head of the patient, and prior to pit crew, like the airway was our number 1. We got to give breath to this person. Now it's kind of a little bit slower process. We put on an oxygen mask right away, and then depending on if the firefighter is a EMT or a paramedic, we either intubate them or we have a thing called a king tube, which is basically like you just put it down their throat and then you inflate it, and then you can ventilate through that. And then rather than that, hopefully that air not going into their stomach, it's going to their lungs and get perfused throughout the body. So they're in charge of the airway, getting that hopefully done. And let's see, position 4, because compressions are so important,
It's hard work giving people compressions. We shoot for trying to rotate a person every 2 minutes, so that fourth position is a second compressor. So if Dave's getting compressions, I'm the second engine that comes in, or I'm on the ambulance, I'm the compressor, I come down next to Dave, I'm like, hey, I'm your next compressor, and then we talk so that we can make like a quick transition so that those compressions are interrupted as for short of time as possible. You want to chime in something?
Should we roll these guys through and just...
Yeah, sure.
So
You guys are going to do it, so you guys, we can see it. Perfect.
Go ahead, first crew in. This is what an actual call would look like. You're dispatched to Station 4 for a female, a 40-year-old female in cardiac arrest. Or male. Or, yeah.
So Ari right here with his back to you guys,
No
is a
false.
paramedic, he's
No
that
bleeding.
protein leader. So Roger's the compressor, so he gets right in and does compressions. Ari's going to turn on the monitor. You can hear that metronome. So now Roger can set his pace to that metronome. Birnbaum's working on the airway.
Ventilate. Ventilate. Ventilate.
Stop CPR. Check rhythm.
No false?
You have to leave. Okay, go ahead. Resume security. You got to leave. What's that? Leave tab.
Ventilate.
So basically, like, they did a rhythm check, they're feeling for a pulse to see if they feel a corresponding pulse with what they see on the monitor. And they'll, they either shock it or they, and then either way they go straight back to compressions. So then these guys are like the second due engine that would be arriving. So then right where we left off, at position 5,
So,
4, 5, and 6.
real world situation, you're by yourself, you don't have 10 people in the room, somebody's down, you do your ABC,
You don't even do
you call for help first before you even start to do this?
for adults, yeah.
You can just delegate it there.
Call 911 and do
Okay, stop
compressions.
CPR, checking rhythm, VSAT, pulse, okay, shocking, everybody clear? Clear. Okay, go ahead and start CPR. Roger. So it's pulse and VSAT there. Okay.
So Josh right here, he has his hand on the patient's femoral pulse to see if Jeff's compressions are creating a pulse, meaning are they perfusing the blood. And then if a patient gets that pulse back too, when they stop compressions, you would be able to feel that pulse. So then you're going to know, they have a pulse back.
Okay. Get a blood sugar while we're at it.
And then Mark here, he's got a smartphone. All of our battalion chief carries a smartphone. It's got a special program on it. They basically time it. It reminds them, like, if any of you, Ari, the paramedic, can give medications, they enter that in, so it's recorded. It's all being cataloged. So when this patient's transported, the doctor at the ER has a full history of what we gave, when we gave it, how many shocks we had. If they got a rhythm, lost it again, that's all being recorded. So that's usually our battalion chief role that does that.
Where we at, Mark? 3:23.5 minutes.
We got it settled, all right?
Yeah. I did right off the go. Yeah, first thing. So like Mike was just saying, like whoever had asked that question about like they had so many people on their street, like, and this is only 2 of the 3 groups of people we sent. So then the next group would probably be the ambulance, which typically would be 2 people. And then
stop CPR. Okay, shocking, everybody clear? Clear, start CPR.
So then that third group of people to show up, they're the extrication position, And we want to get a backboard under this patient. We want to get what we call a Lucas device, which is like an automatic, so that if, just in case that person loses their, if we get it back and they lose it in the ambulance, it's not really safe to get compressions or effective while in the back of an ambulance, so we can push a button and the machine will do it for us.
That's good, guys. Thanks for break that down.
We saved them.
Yeah, say nice. So a ton of changes in how we're doing CPR now. Like Aaron was saying, we have 2 engines come to all these cardiac arrest calls, plus the ambulance, plus the battalion chief. I mean, you see it's pretty well-oiled machine here working. We just kind of got these calls choreographed, and I mean, I've never seen anything like it in my career in the fire service. The save rate that we have now with these calls has been astounding.
Is that 10%?
We're getting, so all I track is people through the hospital, and it was supposed to be 80% of our people from these VFib and VTAC or cardiac arrests are coming back. I've been in this EMS coordinator position for a year. It's been 100% of our VFib and VTAC arrests we're getting back now. That's
As far as like the guy on the golf course that goes into asystole, though, that's low survival.
So asystole is low survival, but people normally drift through one of these algorithms. Unless you're old and like a dying heart, you'll kind of go a different way. But like the guy who goes into cardiac arrest on the golf course is probably one of these VFib or VTAC arrests. Those are the patients that we can get back.
What is VTAC and VFib?
It's so your ventricles. One of them they're just kind of fibrillating. One of them they're just hammering real fast, but it's a non-survivable rhythm. It's not making a pulse.
So coming from a hospital background, it was fairly obvious, very obvious when you had a patient that was DNR. How do you watch out for that in a situation like that?
So usually, like our DNR patients are like an old folks' home or in their house or something. So generally, somebody tells us they have it up in the refrigerator.
Not out somewhere.
Right.
Yeah. And like the second piece of this, kind of, we like carry this in there.
So we'll get respiratory arrest from like the airlines, and that's we have to that's how I mean it's advanced cardiac arrest.
So do you guys
that's the main thing we see with
Hey folks, sorry to interrupt. After your last little bit of your conversation, we're going to rotate groups. So if this group would just move to the next room, to the extrication room. Hi guys. I'm Ron, this is Justin. We'll be your extrication station here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go through a quick demonstration of how to take a door off, what we do, why we do it. As you can see, we already took one door. The difference between this car and a car that you guys are probably driving is this stuff's actually made out of real metal. As you can see, here's our hinge pins that we took off. But our cutters were able to cut through that. You can see how thick that metal actually is. That's 3/4 of an inch of solid metal. Okay.
And what's a new car?
New car, if you look at your door hinge, you got 2 pieces of not even, probably 1/8 inch metal with a pin that goes down the center. Yeah, so it's not much. It's not much. It's over. First question we have is, who's ever wanted to break a car window? Huh? You? Yeah, come on. Come on, if you're going to want to take the tag out.
She's the patient.
Huh?
She's the patient.
Oh no, she's the official car window breaker.
Oh.
So back up a little bit.
Back up to where he's last.
In front of me.
So, what we're going to do is it's not a full big hole. You're not trying to get a hole in it. All you need to do is get this semi-hard ready for it to break down. Okay?
Oh, doing it. Got it. Very nice. Perfect. Very, very nice.
All right.
Thank you.
You're not coming near my car.
That's something that you always wanted to do. You're like, oh, I'd like to break car window. During our training, we get to do stuff like that because we will take and break every window out before we do any training. Just for the sheer fact we don't want to get glass in anybody's eyes. We do it before. We also do it with if somebody's inside the car in a real accident, we'll put a sheet over top of them, or sometimes it does help if we take the window and then break it and we pull it out and done one sheet. We don't want to do that and take the chance of hitting them with the halogen while they're sitting in our shower on glass, right? So if we roll up on a car accident where we need extrication, our normal dispatch is 2 engines, an ambulance, and a battalion chief on a car accident. Okay. If we're doing extrication, we might need to bump that up to another engine or a ladder truck or specific equipment like that. 3 of our 5 engines have this set right here, the battery-powered extrication tools. We got them through a grant. Those 3 tools there with the 6 guys we got, we're looking at $33,000. Okay?
That's the Jaws of life.
Yep. That was the Jaws of Life. The Jaws of Life is a trademark by a company. It's the Jaws of Life. And then we also have the cutter, and we have a ram as well. A ram is just a hydraulic rod that goes up. Okay? Cutter uses hair tools. Anybody use an air nailer?
Yeah.
Okay. What PSI do you set your air nailer at? 90. Okay. These are 100 per 1,000 PSI. Pressure that they're pushing. Their stuff. So it's a little bit higher. So what Justin's going to do is we have a little trouble with these last doors. These things were made to last, right? And we're going to take this door off. And what we'll do is if there's somebody in back who needs medical care and we need to take the door off, one of us, not one of the ambulance folks, because we are trained, we also have the equipment to be in, we'll be in the back doing patient care while we're extricating. Okay, because we can't afford if somebody's suitcase is extremely hurt there to wait for this door to come off to start the care, right? So you can just lose it more often. Justin, the first thing we need to do is make a purchase point, meaning that we can't just take those jaws, just hope they go in there and have something file, right? So we have to make a little hole for the jaws to go in. So Justin can either attack it if this door's off, we can attack it here, or we can attack it over there. We can make a little pin. There's less room to get those tips in.
Usually you want to try the door to see it open.
That is super embarrassing. And when people does that training, they're like, door won't open. It comes unlocked. We always try to try. Saturn cars.
What's that?
You remember the Saturn cars? Remember those things?
Oh, yeah.
What was the problem with the Saturn cars? Anybody know? There's a plastic shell on the outside. There's plastic not matching metal.
So what was that last thing you said?
They were outside. They weren't sheet metal. It was a plastic on the outside, so it was a little bit harder for us to actually think. And if you go on a car accident, think the car exploded, but it was actually all the plastic when it hit and shattered. you think about this door, people might ask, well, why would you spend the time to take the door all the way off, okay? One, when we're trying to take people out of the car, we're going to have the cop right here, and it's hard for somebody on this side to help, right? Because we want to get more room to be able to get in and out. If we're going to take the time to take the door out and open the door, we're going to take the time to get the door out of the way, right? Most of the time. So you got over this side. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut the V-post. So for us, here's A, here's B, here's C, there's D. Right? So the problem with newer cars is these A-posts used to be simple C-panel, right? C-panel was bent and you can cut right through them. The new stuff, they're using like carbon fiber, they're putting a metal rod down it. We're seeing it's hard for us to do. Now we have full access to try to set the car. Right? Super simple, super easy for us to get through our stuff. Get through the stuff. The problem with newer cars for us too is couple-fold. One, you've got hybrid cars that work on battery power, right? Battery and gas. We have the full Tesla, full electric cars, right? And so if one of those catches on fire, we have a couple problems. One, water reacts with lithium-ion batteries, right? And so that's bad. Two, it's going to take so much water to put that fire out, you're going to have to collect that water, that runoff. It turns into a hazmat incident, right? That stuff. And then the bigger problem for us is anybody that's driving a newer car, you'll look up and you're up here, inside the car, or right up here, or in your seatbelt, what do we see? What does that is?
Airbags.
Airbags, that's SRS, right? Safety Receiving System. Okay, those are under high pressure. If we come through and we're not looking, you'll see us sometimes on cars. We might take, don't be mad at us, we might take where your molding here, and if you're injured, we're going to take that and we're going to kill that. Okay? One of the first things we're going to do. Because we need to know where that airbag is. Okay? So if we start cutting, and we cut into that airbag, that's going to be bad. Okay? Because it's going to explode. Possibly explode. When we cut through it. Okay, so you see us and we pull your molding if you're in an accident, like, why are you pulling my molding, man? We want to make sure that when we cut, we're not cutting it. Currently, the technology is not there where they can't make an airbag come up and around the corner. So we're usually safe if we cut it up the fence. Okay.
Can you cut the steering wheel off? How is that thing strong enough?
Oh, yeah. Let's just take the hand and shove it underneath it. Push it up.
Yeah, one more group.
We got a whole other side of the car. This group doesn't care about that other group. Well, just wait a minute. Any questions on anything you guys have seen tonight? Don't be shy, it's fine.
So it says,
You want to pick one up? You can grab one. You can pick one up as well. Hey, who's running this station?
The guys are taking them.
And they're
Lost the brake release.
back around. What's that?
The noodle shop.
Yeah. Noodle shop. What's that? Oh, I know. I can run out of the grill. So the other question we get sometimes is how long the batteries last, right? Battery power. So we have some things. We carry 3 extra batteries on every engine. They're fully charged all the time. These batteries, all from complete, when you start, will give you everything it's got in 40 seconds. Okay? A lot. Plus, we also carry in our rigs what's called tail power. It's plugged into the back. It's an adapter. So now we can run out of generators. So we can run. Want that steering wheel?
Got it.
You got it. It's okay. You just pull some triggers. Oh, sorry. That's it. And yes, if you're wondering, we're like little kids in candy store. We get you a steak. Hold on with that. Hold on with that.
Hey, Ron. Who's going to take you home?
Big necklace out of it. Anybody want a souvenir? Hang it in the office? There, no. You should be holding it. Yeah, you should be holding it. So what you do is you hold it and you drive in the car in the passenger seat and creep people out. I'm making necklace out of that. They get a award at the office or something. Yeah, that's the way you do it, right?
Yep.
The other question we've had a couple times is like, we'll pull up on a car accident, like, why are they popping the tires, right? The car looks fine, we're popping the tires. If somebody's injured inside, we're going to do extrication, and we need to make sure that car is not going to roll, right? And so we will take, and the easiest way for us to do it to make it hard to roll is pop the tires, right? Good stuff. And so another question that the last group had is, have you ever had anybody complain that their door was taken off or cut off? No. They're injured. They want out of the car. We need in the car. We have never had, to my knowledge, we've never had an angry citizen say, you cut my car, or an insurance company come to us and said, we think you did too much damage to the car. No, never. If we feel on scene that we need to extricate a door to get you out, we will do it. Yes, ma'am.
what are some dangers that you've come across?
Generally?
Yeah.
Our biggest danger in car accidents are other drivers.
Drivers?
Other what?
Other drivers. Please, if you were driving and they're in a car accident, pay attention to the road. Don't be looking at them in a car accident, okay? Because we are walking around the car, we are focused on this. Yes, we are looking for other traffic. So you'll see it all the time on the news. First responder hit by a passing car. Whatever the case may be. The other dangers, the electric vehicles, they do have power still. Airbags, not so much. They used to, the worry was, airbags still have power even 20 minutes after you turn the car off. No, that's not it. As soon as you kill the power, the airbags are there. The problem for us is we cut it. Okay? Car fires, we've got the toxic acid one from it. Genital descent missiles. The struts that hold up your hoods, or the ones that hold up the back of your car, those gas struts. Those things are filled with oil. They get hot enough, they'll rupture and send that rod like a missile.
All right, okay.
Do you have warning when that happens?
What's that?
Do you have any warning?
No.
Great.
Just happens. So that's why our stuff, the national protocol is that we approach the vehicle at 45 degrees to the car. We don't never come straight on. Because it's rare for something to come at 45 degrees, so we'll approach it. But from a distance a little bit. Other questions? Anybody want to sleep in their door or hang on the window?
What year car is that?
What's that?
What year car
What
is that?
was it? 76. 1976. Jim Pioneer.
76?
Yeah. We're guessing it was in somebody's field for a while, because there's moss growing all over it.
And what's his nickname? Cutter?
Oh, no, don't worry about that.
It's like that old language.
Yeah, don't worry about that. No, that's all good.
Oh, thank you. What are the most common types of crashes you see?
Most common type of crashes?
Yeah.
Well, it all depends. I mean, we see a lot of rear end accidents, right? People running into each other for whatever reason, whether they're on their cell phone or somebody stops suddenly in front of them, whatever the case may be, right? Those things. We do see quite a few seatbelt accidents, one car hits the other. But most of the time, most of our accidents are minor accidents. We don't have that many significant accidents because the speed level is really 25, right? Even though we do have parts of the highway, that kind of stuff, but we have the straight stretches of the highway, we don't have all the curves, kind of stuff. But most of the time, it's a simple rear end accident. But when we do get where we have significant injury, are people not wearing their seatbelts? Wear your seatbelt.
Wear your seatbelt.
What? They're ready for you next door. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
So, this is more of a show and tell. We have the bomb squad over here, Bob Billy, Bob Frankie, we've got the robots, let's show you how they use those. We've got Jake Ross in here, obviously, it's a detective lieutenant here, bringing boys. But if you have any questions about detectives work, so you can help with that. The SWAT team, James Jones, Pat Walker, Sean Moran, are here with the ARP. Bill Berger and Sergeant Hebert here with the D&T, that's the tactical negotiation team. They're your hostage negotiators and stuff like that. We've got extra equipment to show you. So really, it's a show and tell. Ask as many questions as you want. Get the demos. Tim Harrington is here with his canine. He's right now in the area with somebody, and he'll bring his dog in and do a little demo on drug detection and stuff like that. So, just roam around, help yourself, be inquisitive, find out whatever you want. Quite a bit, really. So we share with the sheriff's department. Everything has been shot. We rescue people in it. So if we have a situation like an apartment building and we want to get the other people out, so SWAT people come in and rescue people, get them an ARD, and get them out of harm's way. It's been used quite a bit. I know sometimes a year, maybe. That might be a bushman.
So what are all these? Is this the bombs?
So yeah, this is our bomb suit, the helmet for the bomb suit. I've got sitting right here. This is a laser ID called ACE ID, and it uses laser spectrometer to measure, to get a chemical analysis of any substance. So we use that to try to. This one's mainly set up for explosives, but it will do other things as well. It'll go through bottles, jars, whatever, and measure what's inside, which is awesome for us, so we expose ourselves to whatever's in it. I put some explosives down here, turn up, like this is just that white powder, that's an explosive called PET. It'll sit here and measure that, come right back, it's really nice. So it's pretty quick. So you just it like this. We set it on top of it. Does this little thing. So it's calling for data sheet, which is the same thing as BATM. So that's what it's saying. If you really wanted to see what it's measuring, there's the chemical signature that it measured, and that's the one that's in the library. So it's just matching it and telling you what chemical substance you have, or most likely to be. Pretty awesome.
So how often have you had to use the suit?
The suit? It's really hard to say because it really depends on what we're doing. We very much try to limit our exposure time to any object. So we try, if we do have to put the suit on, we try to do it very limited time. It's very heavy, it's very hot, and you get tired really fast. So yeah, try not to use it. So, certainly it's got a hard plate up here for blast protection, protection, and it's going to have a lot of people are like, where's your gloves? We don't have gloves. Your fingers? There's something happening. It's designed to kind of minimize some of the blast pressure, but not supposed to be like so if you're too close,
The concussive power?
we would still be. But it just gives you, if you are this far away, or a normal person without that suit, you'd be able to survive it.
Cool.
It's an X-ray source, so when we talk about X-rays, X-ray source, so we do panel, set behind it, then it wirelessly connects to our panel, and then it can see read stuff really rapidly.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, what's this? This is for Hostage Association, right? Ah. Have you, how many times or how often have you had to use your skills?
So we were called up probably 3 times or so last week. About once a day.
Okay. And what kind of training have you had?
So all our divisions on the team go through a 40-hour class. And after that, we train as a team once every other month for 10 hours.
And it's basically to de-escalate situations, right? That's all you want to do. Keep people safe.
Talk the whole thing down to that's our we usually always call that the SWAT team. Okay. Things don't always resolve themselves like that. But that's what we're trying.
So, what's your success rate? It's a bad word, but effectiveness. How effective do you feel you are?
I say we're usually always effective.
Great.
Every incident is different. Every person is different. We're dealing with people who are families, a lot of mental health issues, often drug or alcohol abuse. So it really depends how we communicate with them, how they can communicate with us. And being effective doesn't, for example, we dealt with a very manipulative student. He really wasn't communicating with us like we did communicate, but we were able to keep her talking to us, and she was basically we're talking to her, she was screaming and yelling at us. To
continue to do that until we finally figure out what we can do to resolve the situation. The resolution is that we're going to walk out of the house and SWAT team takes over this. That was
So you're basically the first line of defense for the SWAT team. Or you're the first, no, I didn't say that right. You are the very first person when...
the eyes and ears.
Eyes and ears, oh, great. Oh, that's a good way to...
We gather a lot of intelligence. We try to tell the SWAT team what's going on inside of it. Always keep track of what that person might be feeling, if they're angry, if they're frustrated, if they're asking for something.
And
we really do work for the SWAT team.
yeah, usually they'll
Cool. Thank you both very much. Thank you. Who's next?
Hi there.
You're a member of the SWAT team?
Yes, I am the team leader.
Team leader? Let me back up. There we go. So, how often are you called?
It really depends. I'd say in 2019 we had 5 call-outs where patrol ended up in a situation that they needed a SWAT team. There's also, we use portions of the team or the whole team to assist with high-risk warrant service for people who have weapons with them, who are dealing drugs, or have warrants out for violent crime.
Have you ever been on the wrong end of what they call swatting? Where people...
No, I don't play video games enough.
So nobody's done that, called 911 to get you guys to go to a house?
They have.
They have?
We have seen it here.
Yeah, that's what I meant. I'm sorry. But you haven't had that in a while?
Yeah, I haven't heard of it in a while.
Oh, good. I guess it was just...
but we didn't deploy the SWAT team to it because we realized what it was.
Oh, good.
I think there was one that we did deploy the SWAT team to that was downtown next to the post office. And I believe that was 2 years ago. That ended up being one like that, and there wasn't anybody there. So.
Well, that's good that bad seems to have fallen away.
Yeah, because people are getting in a lot of trouble.
Oh, good. Well, that's good. Yeah. Well, it's dangerous for everybody. So, how long have you had this vehicle? Is this the main vehicle that you use?
So this is our armored rescue vehicle. It's shared with the Sheriff's Office. We got it through a Department of Homeland Security grant. I want to say we picked it up in 2010.
Okay.
If I'm right on that. And so we've had it since then, but we do share it. And it's not only the SWAT team that uses it, explosive ordnance disposal also uses this vehicle.
And so are these some of the tools that you sometimes use?
Yes.
To get into a house, for example?
Fairly often. So, well, no, obviously we have an axe, but we use it more for the selection portion of it than we do. And then a Halligan tool is meant to pry open the outward opening doors. So you actually set it in there and spread the door to the ammo apart from each other and be able to open the door. You can also break open screen doors and padlocks with it, if you have padlocks on. Bolt cutters, self-explanatory. We have a lot of different types of ramps that we use, but they're all basically about the same. Just really pull this in and make it to where they don't bounce off the door when you hit them. In order to breach the doors. We also use breaching shotguns in order to defeat doors.
Oh, okay.
Contain, what's the best way to put it would be like a compressed copper powder. So as soon as it hits that door,
It's just powder that comes out instead of projectiles coming through. But it's enough to defeat either hinges or a locking mechanism to get into a door.
And it's more portable, obviously.
Yes.
Can you exchange it with whatever, make it like a live weapon, or is it just
No,
you
so
just want it to...
they're designated separate. We have less lethal shotguns that are different colored than all the other ones that they're fluorescent orange. So there's no confusion and no live ammo ever goes in them. It's always only those less lethal rounds. But the breaching shotguns, they're all pistol grip shotguns. We don't carry anything like that that has actual, I guess, everything's lethal coming out of a gun, you get that, but they're designated specifically for those breaching rounds.
And do you have anything, like, okay, you've got a lot of nice, cool toys. How are you doing on keeping them maintained? Do you need...
It's hard. It's like, we had a flashbang pole that broke on us. It got too old and we haven't got a replacement yet. And it allows us to deploy a flashbang outside a window or a door without putting it into the structure, because there's always a risk of, children or elderly people inside that could damage their hearing or injure them. They always have the risk of fire. So the safest way to do it is to deploy it outside of an opening, and you still get the effect inside. Without the fire hazard. And like that, we've been trying to find another one of those. It's just unfortunately sometimes equipment breaks, and obviously budgets, you have to stick with them and figure out what you can do to get them. So.
Are there any grants out there that help with maintenance, or they just mainly buy the nice flashy toys?
I don't know a whole lot about the grants myself. We haven't gone through a whole lot of stuff with grants for the SWAT team in general. I know this was a grant through Homeland Security that bought the armored rescue vehicle. And then, we had we still have it. There's a foundation set up to purchase some equipment, and that's gotten us some more just night vision capability, basically. The only thing we've used it for is the department buys some, and then the foundation buys some in order to make it so we can see in the dark. Because it turns out that's pretty important. I think the original night vision we were running was Vietnam era night vision.
Oh, wow.
They were all PDS-7 Bravos. So, completely take out both your eyes into one single thing, so you lose depth perception on it, and the picture wasn't very clear, so we've been upgrading those.
Oh.
But unfortunately, they're expensive. I think that's the problem.
Isn't everything on this?
And I think for most of our equipment that we carry, other than the vests and helmets get issued, and everything else we buy. So.
Wow, you got a lot. That you buy. Wow.
Yep. But we do it because it's important. So.
Yeah, but still, thank you, but that's unfortunate. You should be equipped with everything that you need. Yikes, okay. Thank you very much. That's a nice thing to make certain that stays, is not edited, hint, hint. Hopefully, they're good to noise. I thank you. Have a lovely night.
Thank you.
I feel like this is really hold that thing.
What's this?
Oh my god. I feel like the Michelin Man.
And he finds them in weird spots.
Is there a rope? Yeah. This is the light and computer setup here. Basically, for the
the laptop essentially is the dispatch just runs that. The batteries, it's the hard drive and that kind of stuff. Waiting for that toy.
So, this is what you download after every shift?
Yeah, that's basically the guts of it.
Yeah, why don't you continue on?
I'm with the detectives. Yes. Yeah. Certainly use the data, yes. We certainly use it for our cases, yeah. No, it certainly helps. No, because, some of the people that we talk to lie, but a camera never lies. And so everything that we can get on video is going to help whatever case that we're investigating.
You also sometimes disremember it.
Oh, yes, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. Anything that we can get on camera, it's going to help the case no matter what.
So what would you say has been your hardest case so far? One of your hardest cases that you've been successful in.
We have a lot of hard cases that our detectives investigate. Truly, probably the hardest emotionally are some of the kid cases, whether they're being sexually or physically abused. Those are certainly the hardest as far as emotionally. As far as time-wise and effort into the cases themselves, anytime a person dies, especially if it's at the hands of another for a homicide, those cases are, our detectives spend a lot of hours doing or investigating those cases and bring whoever did it to justice. Generally they don't leave detectives, but some of our individual detectives want to move to a different specialty because of it. We've had that with some of our detectives that have dealt with the child cases and stuff have just burned out from dealing with those types of cases, so they've asked to move to a different specialty, but they haven't not to leave detectives itself. Yeah, with something that has been developed or basically introduced to the police department and detectives within the last 10 years. Chief Brandt with the fire department kind of mentioned that before, as far as back in the day, it was kind of a macho thing, but we've learned, over these last years and stuff, that there's secondary trauma that officers and investigators go through. It's because they take on that trauma from some of the victims and stuff, and they can be affected. So over these last 10 years as a department and as the city, we've tried to offer as many programs as we can to those officers and those detectives to try to help them through those emotional issues. Generally, we don't have to deal with appeals. Appeals they take all the information that's already been recorded in court, and that's what they use for appeals. But as far as when the case ends, for some victims and for some cases, it never ends. Even after the court, even after the prosecution and the conviction, those victims may reach out to that detective years down the road for a question or for support. Or anything, because they have that connection with that detective, and so it could be years even after the conviction. The person may be in prison for it, and that victim still may reach out to that detective. There's certain school, we go through interview training, we go through crime scene, we go through some kind of basic investigative techniques, and then depending on which specialty the detectives want to try to go into, whether it's crimes against kids, whether it's burglaries, whether it's fraud, we send those detectives to as many schools as we can afford, not only through budget, but also through our shift strength, to make sure that we have enough. We can't send everybody to train. Somebody's got to man the station, and be around and be available. So we can't send everybody, but we try to train them as much as we can, because the more training they get, and the more experience they get, the better detective they are. You're welcome.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, if they didn't want to come here, they were in bed. And they didn't want to yeah, we were and stuff.
Yeah, my dogs were so mad. Yeah, burger all day, huh?
Wow.
You just want to stop.
So, hi, how many hearing officers are there in the
So the city, we have 2 dogs, and the county has 2 dogs. We got our dogs at about the same time, but county restarted their program, I think in 2016. But our program has been going for about 23 years, since 1997.
Wow. And what is this dog's name?
His name is Sunka.
Sunka?
Means dog in Lakota. S-U-N-K-A.
Perfect. Beautiful, by the way. Absolutely
Thank you.
beautiful. And what kind of cases do you pursue?
Right now, he's a narcotics detection dog. So there's a lot that goes into those investigations before you can use a dog in the state of Montana. But that's our primary focus right now. You can also find articles or evidence in outside or in a field or anything like that. So. Give it up. Give it up. Give it up. Yes. Give it up. Yes. Been teaching him to bark quiet.
Bark quiet. Oh, perfect, perfect. And do you usually do, like, I'm sure that, does he do citizen outreach? Do you do citizen outreach?
We do Leadership Missoula. We go to the high schools and give demonstrations. The Citizens Academy, we do demonstrations. So yeah, next two weeks from now we have the Criminology Club at the university. We're going to give a demo for. So yeah, I think people recognize that dogs are a very popular thing in the community. So that's why we have friendly social dogs.
Wonderful, my goodness. How long have you been here? Have you been
4.5 years with him. Yes.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
And you try to keep that. Do you take him home?
Yes, he lives with me. Yep. I built a kennel in my backyard for him. And,
Gotta have that connection, huh?
Yes.